You are speaking about something that is bigger, and they do run the risk of it looking, for want of a better word, a little bit petty if they don't go and support it.
You can't just sweep that under the carpet. There's got to be an apology.
Of course you would be angry, and of course you would be well within your rights to do exactly as they have done.
He's being placed in a dilemma as to how to cope with this. I think we have to wait and see how this moves on.
He was possibly quietly seething for a long time, and that headspace, as they describe, he's clear now. Welcome to Royal Exclusive. Now, Meghan Markle may have enjoyed a moan in the past, but now she's brought out a whine. Prince William is said to have moved on from Harry's insult-laden exit, so should we? And with the Princess of Wales pulling out of Royal Ascot as she balances her return, should more royals be asked to step up into the limelight? In the studio with me today is news.com.au royal reporter Bronte Coy and former Buckingham Palace spokesman Dickie Arbiter. I think this is a little bit incendiary, and I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on this. No, not what I'm about to say, but what's happened is we're hearing that Prince Harry has invited the King and Prince William to go to the Invictus Games. It's 2027, so we're 2 years away. That puts everyone in a little bit of a dilemma, because if he invites them to the games in Birmingham, normally at these games, the head of state or the defence secretary will go to Harry's games. What do you think the King and William will be thinking about?
Well, has he actually invited them, or has he just said he would like them to come? It is 2 years away, and there are those who say, well, William and the King can always come up with diary engagements, and there are those cynics who say, well, it is 2 years away, adjust your diary. There's got to be a lot to happen between now and then. You can't just brush everything under the carpet. The Oprah interview, the 6 hours of Netflix slagging off the royal family, the book Spare. You can't just sweep that under the carpet. There's got to be an apology. Yes, the King is sort of Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Services, and it would be a good fit and a good show for him to appear. But it's a very difficult one. He's being placed in a dilemma as to how to cope with this. I think we have to wait and see how this moves on as to whether there is an apology. Life can change in 2 years. A day in politics is a long time. 2 years in the royal family is even longer. So let's just see what happens on that front.
May I ask you, one of the parts of the story, this was in the Mail on Sunday, I think, the other day, one of the parts of the story was that emphasis on getting in early with the invitation because the royal diary can fill up years in advance. How true is that in this scenario where let's say that the invitations have been sent out, is it possible that they would already be booked for, I think it's July 2027? The King, for example, would he be booked already, do you think?
Firstly, I doubt the invitations have already gone out. I think Harry has sort of indicated and sort of flagged up that he would like his dad and his brother there. He's got to clear a lot of bad air to get them there, because William really doesn't want to have anything to do with him. A parent is slightly different. He loves his son, but he's very hurt by what his son has done. And there doesn't seem to be any move of rapprochement. He says, yeah, he wants to see his father. He made that silly comment a few weeks ago that he doesn't know how long his father has got. I mean, you don't say things like that in public. So he's got a lot of ground to make up. And the ground is with a capital A, apology. And you've got to mean it. But at the moment, his father won't see him, because if his father sees him, that anything he says will be all over the airways, all over the internet in a nanosecond. And at the moment, he can't trust him.
But you were famously sorting out these kind of issues when you were working for Her Majesty.
We didn't have issues like that.
But you had to negotiate what would look good, what would look bad, how to kind of present things. This would cause a massive headache to you if you were in your position.
It would cause a massive headache, because you just don't roll over having been rubbished for such a long time over a wide platform. Netflix has got millions of listeners. Harry Spare book sold millions. Oprah has 1 million viewers. To rubbish the royal family to that extent, and then expect everybody to roll over and say, oh, kiss and make up. all is forgiven. There's an equation to this, and the other half of the equation is Mrs. Wales, Mrs. Sussex.
I think this is such a difficult one. I've given this one a lot of thought since the story came out, and also since we found out that it was going to be in Birmingham. I think there is a lot of sympathy and understanding and respect for the King's position and William's, because I think anyone can relate to the fact that if you've been spoken about, particularly publicly, and had your personal issues with family members aired in that way, of course you would be angry, and of course you would be well within your rights to do exactly as they have done, which is basically shut it down and cut him off because there's no trust. With that said, it's a tricky one because this is beyond Harry. Of course, it's his event, but it's in the UK, and you're talking about the military community, of which the royals are very, very, very entwined, and it is bigger than Harry, so that you do run the risk. And I say this again with great respect to the family issues, because I understand their position, but you are speaking about something that is bigger, and they do run the risk of it looking, for want of a better word, a little bit petty if they don't go and support it, given their position in supporting the military community. And it's particularly an event like this, which is a very good event that is held. It is a wonderful thing that is put on and means so much to that community. So I think it is particularly complicated, but I think that that's something that is going to be discussed a lot in the palace.
You're absolutely right. There's got to be a lot of give and take on this one, and it would be a bad fit if there was no representation from the King, because he is Commander-in-Chief. And these servicemen, ex-servicemen, they signed up the Queen shilling, and today it's the King shilling to serve. So it would be a very difficult one. They're faced with a dilemma, and somebody's got to come out with a resolution. Somehow it's got to work that there is a presence of the King. I don't think there needs to be a presence of William, but certainly of the King as Commander-in-Chief, their Commander-in-Chief, because they're still military-minded, and it would be right for him to be there. How it's done remains to be seen. It is 2 years away. A lot can happen in 2 years.
And we thought that it had all died down because it did appear that Harry and Meghan, but particularly Harry in this instance, wasn't going to talk anymore about the family. And then we obviously had that very unexpected and explosive BBC interview. So as you say, that's a crucial point. If there's any more of that over the next 2 years, and 2 years is a long time, it is much harder for there to be any more push forward. But maybe if nothing else happens for 2 years and the water's calm,
come on, that's not going to happen.
I don't know, maybe.
They are in a pickle, but there is possibly a way out. No members of the royal family went to the 10th anniversary at St Paul's Cathedral last year. Harry came. We were led to believe that kind of invites or offers, would a member of the royal family like to come? They didn't. They said they were busy. They didn't meet Harry when he was over. And it's also Camilla's birthday. I think right in the middle of when the Invictus Games is, so they do have that kind of excuse.
Yes, you can throw all sorts of things into the melting pot as to why it can't happen, but this is a very difficult and sensitive one, because it's not just about the relationship of the King with his son, with his younger son. It's also his relationship with servicemen, injured servicemen, veterans, and dare I say, he has to be seen to be believed. So he's faced with a very difficult dilemma. But 2 years is a long time. A lot can happen.
I know. We'll be talking about it again, I'm sure. We'll be talking about it again. Now, Dickie, should we be surprised that Meghan Markle has joined a whole long list of celebrities by bringing out a rosé wine? I
don't think we should be surprised at anything she does. And as far as bringing out a wine, it's going to sell something for something like 20 quid or $28 US. It's a lot of money. And if you're going to go into that sort of business, you've got to produce a lot of wine to make money. If her jam is anything to go by, it's going to be sold out in about 10 minutes. How many bottles is she producing? Who's producing it? She's not a wine expert. So, why go into something that you probably know nothing about?
That's a really interesting point. I mean, we'll get onto this in a little bit later about how her products have they actually sold out and how many, wines and jams she's actually making. But I'm not surprised that she's gone into winemaking, because if you are a celebrity like Meghan Markle is now, that's what everybody's doing. Well,
it's very appealing to celebrities to do it, because if it's produced en masse, exactly as you've mentioned, you can make a lot of money out of it. George Clooney sold his, I think, Casamigos tequila one, I think for $1 billion US
Yeah, but she's
dollars.
not George Clooney.
Of course, and that's going to be the problem. People will note that. So, look, I can understand why she's gone in there. It certainly fits with everything else she's putting out there. But we've touched on the key element, which is until these things are produced in very, very large quantities, it's not going to make the kind of money that really makes it worthwhile. And I understand this time around when she's done the restock, she'd increased the quantities by tenfold, but we don't know what the original number was. So I still don't know what numbers we're working in here.
Well, there's lots of internet sleuths. If you go online, and there's lots of people who are claiming that they've tried to buy some of these new products. The wine will come out on July the 1st, but the new jams and the new spreads, as we call them, are now on the website. And there are people that claim that they've tried to buy some and they were sold out immediately, suggesting that these were very, very low amounts of stock.
Well, the jam was something like 100, wasn't it? And by the time you've given your friends most of them, there's not much left to sell. So, of course, people going online trying to buy will be disappointed, if indeed they are disappointed.
And I was reading some interesting articles from PR experts talking about this because obviously, look, I'm not a branding expert. I don't know what works with the consumers, but I found it interesting when you compare it. You know, obviously there's that mentality of I must have it because it's selling out. It's like when we see a queue and you want to join it because you think there's obviously something worthwhile here. The problem with this is you're talking about stock that you need to replenish in your fridge because it's things that are going to run out. So if you're not able to buy this expensive jam that's, even if it's wonderful, you are going to find a different type. And then you might get stuck on that other brand, particularly if it costs less money. So in that regard, I don't really understand the long-term strategy of continually selling out of essentially supermarket goods, fancy supermarket goods. But it's the kind of thing you can get at any supermarket. So why would you continually wait months and months on end for these new restocks if you can get it elsewhere?
Interesting thing on the jam, you mentioned the jam. There's a lady in the States called Donna Collins. She's a world expert in jam making, and she's won over 40 championships in making jam. I'm not sure how these championships work, but she says it's not jam, it's spread, because it has no consistency to it. And if Meghan really wants to get into the market of food, you've got to do your research properly. Don't listen to other people. Do your own research and work on it and see what does sell and what doesn't sell. Don't come up with an idea, oh, I'm going to do jam. I'm going to give half of them to my mates and sell the other half, and then disappoint people who want them. You've really got to do your research. And if you're going to sell, you've got to buy in bulk. And that's taking a risk on a product you don't actually know much about.
And you're talking about a website also that it's been live for a couple of months now, but if the first batch sold out within an hour and the second one was also a similar time, you're talking about a site that has really only had active products on it for, 4 hours in total out of 2 months. That's not a very good user experience. So again, I don't really see the long-term strategy. It's obviously good that they're selling out in terms of its popularity, but I think that would be a frustrating user experience in the long term.
Selling out is a selling point. Because people think, oh, this must be terrific. That's why it's going so quickly. But as you rightly say, what's the quantity that they are actually selling? What is the quantity that they're actually buying? It's very tiny.
Well, there is a suggestion that you talk about the restocking, because she's not bringing out the spread, not a jam. It's like this raspberry spread. She's not restocking that. So that was her signature product. That was the one that, you know, my jam, everyone knows my jam is my jam. That was the thing. That doesn't exist anymore. She hasn't restocked it.
I wonder what the story is behind that too, because she spoke about it on one of the podcasts she did recently. She said that she wanted it to be the kind of thing that people always have in their fridge. But again, that's not a situation that's tenable if it's not available to buy. So I don't really understand that goes against what she herself has said about her signature product.
But weren't the jams numbered? They were a limited product.
Yes, the initial ones. I think there were 50 to begin with when she did the first soft launch and sent them to all of her friends.
So this over 5 years since Megxit, but this firmly places her in the kind of celebrity product arena with other stars. You know, as we mentioned, so many. Like Kylie Minogue has a lovely rosé wine. She's now in that category, isn't she?
Celebrity with a small C, I would have thought.
It's definitely that category. I think we've seen it more and more from her Instagram. We've spoken about this on the show in the way that she's presenting it with those curated videos, and it's very much that celebrity influencer wellness space now. It does feel that it's worlds away from her royal days, but to be honest, I don't think she minds. It doesn't appear that she's thinking about that royal connection in terms of how they might view it.
I was quite pleased. There's a story over the weekend in the Sunday Times, quite an in-depth well briefed, I think, story about where Prince William is at the moment. These are the kind of things we've been hearing for a while, that he wants to do things his own way, but he's obviously respecting everything that his father is doing. He's gone through lots of incredible training, and he's concentrating, not trying to spread himself too thin, concentrating on many of his wonderful charities and events. This week he's lots of climate talks that he's been attending this week. But there was one comment in here, and I'm just going to read it out, and I want to get your thoughts. This was from a source that I spoke to the Sunday Times, and they said, it used to be that the family stuff with Harry was taking up a lot of space in his head. It was a very close relationship, and he was very upset, but he's not letting it get to him anymore. It's a challenge, it's sad, but it's a much healthier space for him to be at. I like that. I like that it appears that William has just gone, I've got to move on with my important job.
Well, it reminded me of, I think it was back in 2020, right before the Sandringham summit. There was that article came out saying that William was no longer going to, he'd had his arms around Harry their whole life, and he no longer was going to do that. What happened afterwards, no one really could have expected how bad things would probably get between the Sussexes and the rest of the family following that summit, and as you've mentioned, all of the Netflix things, the memoir, everything that came afterwards. But that was 5 years ago. So there have been things that would have inflamed that situation, and being able to let go of that rage would have been difficult when it was being provoked again so often. But the fact that he's reached that point now in any breakup of any type, you do need to reach that point to be in a healthier headspace. And I think that after everything that's happened over the last 12 months, it seems he's now finally able to potentially just not be provoked by that ongoing situation.
Well, are you impressed, Dickie or Bronte, that he hasn't ever answered back? He hasn't, it's all one-way traffic from California.
There was only that one aside when he went to an engagement shortly after that Oprah interview, when there was a shout from the press corps about racism, and he said, my family's not racist. And that's the only time that he's responded. What he has done, he's prioritised where his life is going, and he knows exactly where it's going. On the personal front, it's his wife and his children, and that is very important to him, because he had a rotten year last year. When your wife tells you, well, I've got a cancer and I'm having treatment for it, after the abdominal operation. And as far as his public life is concerned, it's the UK. It's the survival of the monarchy. Very much like his grandmother. His grandmother worked tirelessly for the institution. His father is working tirelessly for the institution. And so will William. The survivability of the monarchy. Here we are in the sort of 21st century, and people say, well, why have you got a monarchy? Well, there are a number of European countries that got a monarchy, and it's very successful. It's successful here. What is the alternative? God forbid that you're talking about a president. We won't go there because it's not worth going to. But it is the survivability of the monarchy. And yes, William will do things slightly different. We all remember the King's coronation, and it did look a bit old-fashioned, if I can use those words, to see the King and Queen dressed up with crowns on their head. That's something from the past. It worked in '53 at the coronation.
So this is a suggestion that he would like a slim down, but a shorter ceremony, and
it can happen. It can happen because it really is. It's sort of ordination by God into his role as sovereign. And yes, he probably will do things differently. If you remember when the late Queen was immobile and didn't do the state opening of Parliament, the crown was there, but it wasn't on anybody's head. Now, there's no reason why they couldn't do something similar with the crown on a cushion. It symbolises the monarchy. It doesn't have to actually go on the monarch's head, but it is about confirming him in the eyes of God that he is head of state and Supreme Governor of the Church of England. That is the important part. But it can be slimmed down. The King knocked about an hour off, and there's no reason why William can knock another hour off, and it's all over in half an hour.
It's such a difficult line to walk, because of course I completely agree with you. I loved the spectacle of the coronation.
It's tradition.
And I'm personally, I'm a huge history nerd, and I love all that. So it feels like living history when you watch these ceremonies. But you're right that it can also be jarring to a lot of people, and you need to have the right balance of the monarchy needs to be seen to be this something special that you have here. It is something very special that a lot of people care a lot about, and obviously it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. but also it needs to fit with modern society. But it needs to have both, because it needs to keep that uniqueness, because it is something that's the only thing that they can offer, because you've got presidents and prime ministers all over the world, but you do have these monarchies, and this is what they can offer, which is the pomp and pageantry. So it was interesting in this article, because I think that it was very much saying, to read between the lines and summarise it, it seemed very much to be saying he understands that. He's not going to ruffle too many feathers. It was evolution, not revolution, I believe. But there was also some funny little tidbits that I found quite telling. You know, friends of his saying that he's not very comfortable with the top hat and that level of pomp and ceremony. And I think that was in there just to remind us that he's a cool guy. Yeah. He's a younger cool guy. You know, he's one of us in a way. There was those little bits throughout the profile that I found very interesting.
Change is no bad thing. I mean, the late Queen used to say, I don't change. I evolve and adapt to the time, adapt to what is going on today. And she changed seamlessly, because people say, oh, didn't she do that all the time? No, she didn't do it all the time. It's just, and it does evolve. It's evolved for 1,000 years, and it will continue evolving. And if there's a change in the whole concept of the coronation service, is that a bad thing? Probably not. It's just bringing it properly into the 21st century while still maintaining the tradition. Keep the crown there, but it doesn't have to go on the head. It can symbolise, and that's what it does. It symbolises the monarch. But to stand on the balcony, I felt sorry for the King and Queen standing on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with these crowns. It did kind of look out, it looked terrific, but it did kind of look out of place in the 21st century.
Interesting. I mean, personally, and I've said this before, I went to the coronation and I had to get there very early, like 8 a.m, and sat there for 3 hours before it started. But I wished it was longer. I don't want it to be shortened. I want it, there's no point just having a half an hour coronation.
You should have been there in 1953 when there were 8,000 people in there,
just
and
make
it went on for hours.
Of money. I don't mind it. But what I got from this article, and I think you both pointed out very well, is that Prince William has far more serious things to deal with than his brother.
Oh, yes.
That's what it appears. You know, and do you think he's in a better place now than he was, well, last year? Definitely.
Last year, I always think of the quotes he gave when he was in Cape Town, talking about what a brutal year it had been. I think that was it October, November, and so this time last year they were really in the thick of it, and we only found out afterwards just how bad just how difficult and challenging it had been for the family behind the scenes. So 12 months on, thankfully, Catherine seems to be doing a lot better, and she's in remission now, and they're both back at work. All of that probably has really helped his, as we said earlier, his headspace to say, well, I'm also going to draw the line in the sand on Harry. I'm looking forward. It's been a really difficult time, and I don't have the energy to focus on things like that, really.
There are too many things happening without being disrupted by his brother going off-piste. There are far more important things. His brother's decided on his way of life, and until such time he decides to change and apologise to the family, William has cut his own path. His own path is his family and the country and the monarchy.
I get the impression he was possibly quietly seething for a long time, and that headspace, as they describe, he's clear now. He's not kind of, personally grieving or seething about what's happened to his brother. He's just parked that and he's moved on with the important
There was this massive hurdle last year with his wife having the abdominal operation and then being diagnosed with a cancer. And that's difficult for any family. You don't have to be royal to have to be confronted with difficulties like that. And he's come through it. Catherine's come through it. She's happier. The children are happier. He's happier. Now he can get on with the job, and the job of monarchy.
Well, Dickie, that's the time when you need your brother when your wife has cancer. That's the time when you need him standing next to you, helping out and chatting to you and supporting you.
He had his aunt, he had his uncle, he had his father, and he had his stepmother. What more can you ask for when your brother's gone off-piste?
Fair enough. And we mentioned the Princess of Wales there, and that that William is going to be happy that the Princess of Wales is recovering. But we did have a little bit of a scare last week. Bronte, should we pull back the curtain and reveal what actually happens with Royal Exclusive? Yes. We went to Ascot together.
It was supposed to just be a very calm sort of work day. It was, at Royal Ascot with the other royal reporters.
We got off the train, didn't we?
We got off the train. We were all dressed nicely. You were in your top hat. We were very excited to get inside and maybe have a champagne. Right at the gate, though, the news broke that Catherine would no longer be attending. And it really caused, for want of a better word, quite a kerfuffle. People were, you said it there, the word scare is right. Initially, with everything that's happened and, of course, with the backdrop of the health issues last year, as soon as you have sort of that last-minute news drop, it is going to spark a little bit of panic. So there was a lot of people sort of, especially where we were, of course, with all the royal reporters sort of checking in. Do we know what's happened? What's happened? Bit of a worry.
Well, it's a bit of a mess, Dickie, because
happened before.
We were told that we were briefed that to expect the Princess of Wales, and they do that occasionally, and they say this is a good day to go, let the photographers know type thing, this is going to be a big event. So we were really excited about it and looking forward to that day. And then at midday, Ascot put out the carriage list, which they do. They announced the carriage list, which has been agreed with the royal family. 20 minutes later was when we got the message saying actually the Princess of Wales...
Well, in my day, the carriage list didn't go out until everybody was actually in the carriage, which is a long way down the other end of the course. And it takes a while to get up, by which time you can put the list out because it's confirmed the people are in there without jumping the gun. It was done some time ago on another event where I think she was supposed to go to Irish Guards.
That's right.
And it didn't happen. No, it's jumping the gun. It's an administrative error. Nothing to worry about because Carol Middleton was there engaging jollily with the king.
I think that was the biggest sign, wasn't it? Seeing her mother there and her husband there. We know, especially William in the past with everything last year, if things had been serious or if there had been something to worry about, he would have had no qualms in being with her and looking after her and her mother as well. And they all did seem to be having a nice time. I think that was the fears were quickly abated because we realised that. But also, and we were talking about this earlier, last week, and for anyone that's not in the UK right now, last week was so hot. And I say this because, as you've mentioned, they get in the carriage. So at Windsor Castle, it's a long trip. We were outside watching the carriage procession with the royals going past for a very short period of time, really. And it was so hot. I think I was complaining nonstop. Sorry to anyone next to me. But it was boiling hot. And then you imagine if you're feeling even remotely off or fatigued, and again, with everything that's happened, it's completely understandable. And she's also coming off the back of a very busy week on other very hot days when she'd been out on display with the world's eyes on her, trooping the colour, the Garter ceremony. I can very much understand saying, I'm not 100%, I'm not up to this. I can't sit there in the burning heat with everyone looking at me today. Completely fair enough. Again, we were out there for a short period of time and I made it known I was displeased.
I don't know what has changed, but certainly, as I said a moment ago, in my day, the list wasn't released until they were firmly in the carriages. The carriages were on the move. All you've got to do is pick up the phone and confirm the list they've got. It's not rocket science.
But we said it was a scare. I mean, I said it was a scare. Maybe I went over the top saying that, but it was a worry. But I think we would know if it was worse. We would be told that.
I think for a couple of minutes, it's fair to say that when the news first dropped, only because of everything that had happened for that few minutes while everyone was sort of working out what was happening, and what a place to be with news like that coming through in a room full of royal reporters.
It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. It's caused them problems. But it does bring up the idea that if the Princess of Wales, she was out of duty for about 7 or 8 months last year, do we need more of the other royals to step up? We're looking a little bit slim with just the King, Queen.
She was out. She was out for 7 or 8 months. The King was confined to his constitutional duty behind walls, rather than doing his job as head of nation, going out and about, which he really enjoys. We didn't suffer, and engagements weren't pared back. Other people jumped in. If you're going to say, do we need more? Who, for example?
Well, at Royal Ascot, when I was there, we were looking at them in the box. I mean, we had Zara, we had Beatrice, we had Eugenie,
Princess
we had
Anne
Peter
was very
Phillips.
clear that Zara and Peter Phillips are not royals. That's why they haven't got titles, and it's unfair to put that burden on them. They've got their own lives to lead, and they're doing it very well. If you're talking about the York girls, well, It's all very well saying, well, we'll bring those on board. Yes, they're invited to garden parties to fill the numbers. People like meeting them. They enjoy being at the garden party. But if you're going to start pushing them onto royal engagements, you're talking about paying. And who's going to pay? Already there are always question marks about the amount of money that the royal family get. It's there in the annual report how it's spent. And there's an extra wad of money at the moment for the resurfacing of Buckingham Palace, which has to be done. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of money to go around. It might sound a lot, but for what they do and what it's spent on, there is not a lot of money to go around.
It would relieve the pressure that sometimes, or the exposure that the Princess of Wales suffered, last week and last year, where people were asking where it was.
Well, it didn't matter that she didn't go to Ascot. Come on, it's a social
But it would
occasion.
release the kind of pressure if there were more, possibly other royals. Like, I'd love to see more from Sophie. I'd love to see Sophie pushed right to the front, and she wants to do it.
Sophie is up front, and she's doing a lot, as is Edward doing a lot, and Anne has always done a lot. And look at the King. He's still having treatment every week, but he's soldiering on. He's doing a lot, as is Camilla. I think we're doing quite all right at the moment without having more royals to do what?
Okay.
There you are.
There we go. I've been told.
I know.
My campaign is over.
It's well prosecuted. I think he's won the case.
No, we just looked at Ascot. I just realised how many members of the royal family there were, and we concentrate on a very small number. And there's so many patronages, so many charities, so many organisations that kind of want a royal connection.
They can have the royal connection. There's nothing to stop them inviting the junior royals to become a patron or president. Just don't get them onto the royal road, because they have to be then paid for.
Okay, all right. I need to talk to you about the Queen Elizabeth's National Memorial, late Queen Elizabeth II's National Memorial. There was a shortlist. I think there was a shortlist of 5, and we looked at some of the wonderful, conceptions that had come up. And the one is Lord Norman Foster, who has previously clashed with Charles in the past, actually.
Yes, over the former Chelsea barracks.
He did, yeah.
Yes.
So Lord Foster.
Yes.
But what do we think of this? I think it's quite spectacular. I love the bridge. The bridge is designed on the late Queen Elizabeth II's tiara from her wedding.
The Queen
tiara.
Mary tiara.
Yeah.
And I did go on social media to say that any memorial to the late Queen has got to have 3 ingredients. They are the great lady, her consort of 73 years. They've been in love with each other for 80 years. Because they first met in 1939, and a horse. And it's got to be a horse.
Of course.
And it's there. How it's interpreted by who's ever going to be doing the sculpting. I think the bridge is a good idea. The bridge is lovely. That sort of Queen Mary tiara, the one that the Queen wore at coronation.
You knew her, you worked with her, you spoke to her, you were friends with her possibly.
Well, not friends. They offer friendliness. Not friendship.
What do you think she would have thought about this memorial?
She would have thought they'd probably got it right. The other interesting thing that nobody has mentioned, and I fail to understand why, maybe it's because they're too young to know. Sorry, I'm being a bit of an ageist here.
Please.
But the whole of the setup in St James's Park is a stone's throw from the memorial to King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, which is just across the other side of the Mall on the northern side.
Fitting.
So it's in sight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's a good move.
It's hard to find a figure in history that is more beloved than Queen Elizabeth II here in Britain and all over the world. And it really was a tall order to get it right. It's good to know that you think she would like it. I saw it and I thought it was wonderfully done. As you said, I loved the bridge idea because it's quite simple but very unique and it looks fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that when that's all finished.
I like that it's quite almost subtle. It's not a vast building, or it's not a vast tower or anything.
No, those
like
are
that.
sort of concepts, weren't they? When the idea was first mooted several months ago, somebody came up with a sort of vast construction. And I think, if we go on constructions, in a memorial to Diana, Princess of Wales, I call it a ditch in Hyde Park. It's not a memorial. It's just a sort of trench with water in it. Which is a great pity. But I think late Queen would approve of what is being conceived in memory of her.
And
And it has to be something very special.
And I think some of the best memorials are ones that have that immersive element where it isn't, I know there's obviously statues involved in this one, but having something like a bridge, it does seem very simplistic, but you then walk across it and in that moment, you're having that moment of reflection. You're not just sort of standing still or
It's a connection, isn't it?
Yes, it's that moment of connection, and it's just a very subtle way of doing that. I thought it was really well done.
The one thing that does concern me is so the statues that we see in the artist impressions, they are just artist impressions. The sculptor has not been decided on, and the actual design of the statues has not been decided on. And because the Queen had such a long iconic life and many different iconic looks, I'm just nervous about what image of her that they will use for the final statue. I mean, surely if she's on a horse, fine. We'll get one from when she looked resplendent on the horse in her outfit when she was younger.
It's Burmese. She rode Burmese in Trooping the Colour until she gave up in 1986. And it's important that Burmese does feature in 1996. But in terms of the way she looks and what period they take, that's going to be a very difficult decision to take. You don't want them looking old because they were old. You want them being representative of who they were. And that's a difficult ask for any sculptor.
How involved do you think the King and say Prince William will be in choosing that final picture?
Yeah, that's a great thought.
I'm just wondering, because of course there are a lot of people that are involved, and it's going to be a public space, but it's also it's mother and grandmother.
Yes, there'll be approval from him, like the sort of casts that are made on coins and banknotes that they're presented to him by the Royal Mint for approval, and likewise with stamps. So I think they'll be placed, ideas will be placed before him. But at the end of the day, it's the decision of the committee to come up with the right, and they've got to get this one right.
Yes.
Well, we kind of know because obviously Lord Foster has written, I think, in a newspaper accusing the then Prince Charles of kind of lobbying about the barracks. So if he didn't want Lord Foster, he could have said no. But I think that's years ago and everything's
that's in the past.
Exactly.
The committee chose, and it's quite it's a committee made up of people who can be trusted to come up with the right sort of idea for a memorial.
Well, hopefully next year, I think we will be able to cross that bridge.
I look forward to talking about it.
Well, we won't be able to cross anything. We'll hopefully get some idea of who the sculptor's going to be, and maybe some idea, because that's the anniversary of her birth, centenary of her birth.
Maybe the centenary.
Yeah.
Exciting. Right, we've just got time for our quick-fire questions.
Okay.
So I don't know if you see the photograph that was issued for William's birthday, but he was there with these new puppies. So Orla has had 4 lovely little puppies. So who should get William's puppies?
Well, the King's only just gotten his first dog, I think recently, for the first one he'd had in 20 years. And all reports are he's very excited about it, enamoured by this puppy. So is it Snuff? I think the dog's called Snuff, which is funny. Maybe he's happy to take some more on. That would be nice. Maybe he can be a monarch who also is surrounded by cute dogs.
I think the puppy should be kept in the family, because...
The busy household, though.
out of the family, people will sort of make a big deal of it. So I think James, the brother, should have one. The sister should have one, and maybe the Edinburgh should have one. I'm not too sure if Anne's dogs would accept a cocker puppy, but keep it within the family. Don't farm them out or sell them.
You're right. They would be with that connection to the Walesers. Yeah, it's got to stay.
Well, I'm going to make a plea. I'd like one of those. I thought it looked adorable. I'm going to ask.
So you can't give one to Matt. He'd make a big deal about it. He'd be very excited.
What alcoholic drink should Meghan bring out next?
Tequila, so she can maybe become a billionaire like George Clooney. And of course, there aren't enough celebrity tequilas on the market. That's sarcasm. There are plenty.
Don't bother.
Rosé is just enough. One glass of rosé is enough.
I think, let's see how the rosé goes. How many bottles are going to be produced? That's the big question. Yeah. It's not going to become a billionaire on alcohol.
No.
Okay. And after the Sun revealed Marvel movie Avengers Doomsday is being filmed at Windsor, which royal would make the best superhero?
Can I go? I think I know.
You go first.
I think I know. You can have a thinking minute. So I was picturing them all sort of in that superhero look. It's got to be Mike Tindall, right? I know he's royal sort of adjacent. I think it counts. But he looks like he could be one of the Avengers. You could see him in one of those outfits, sort of running around saving the world with them, because he's got the big rugby physique. That's my answer. Yeah.
How far royal are you prepared to spend? I think the immediate royals, the 7 that are doing the key jobs, they should be pushed to one side, because we had the debacle. You won't know about this. You might remember it. 1987 Royal Knockout, where you had a number of royals. Yeah, it was an embarrassment. So they should stay to one side. Yes, the late Queen, she had a cameo with James Bond in 2012 for the opening of the Olympics, but she was behind a desk. She was being M.
It was classy.
That was the right one. Her Platinum Jubilee in 22, yes, she played opposite Paddington Bear, which was terrific, but only she could have done that. So I think the bulk of the royals should step to one side. And if you want to have somebody who's on the edge of the royals, I think Mike Tindall's probably is the right one. Or even Zara.
Oh, yes.
The Tindalls.
They'd have fun.
But nobody else. They couldn't take it off.
And then, to be fair to them, not being weird, but they would probably look good in, like, the suits. Do you know what I mean? Like Mike and
You have
Mike
to say
Zara.
I'm not being weird. It's probably weird. No, I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that they've got the right vibe, the right aesthetic. I agree with you. Good
Wonderful. Oh, thanks,
We'll go
guys.
for the Tindalls.
Tindalls all round.
2.
Lovely. Right, well, we've covered a lot. I've had a lovely time. So thanks very much for both of you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for watching. If you like the show, please leave a comment below, because we do read them. And subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.